We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated, secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
I recently found myself sitting in my reading chair in the dark, late into the evening, listening to the thunderstorm outside while sewing up a tear in a unicorn stuffy. And I remember just kind of sitting there and thinking, like, how did I actually end up here? This was not a scene I had ever pictured or any part of my life I would have imagined myself being in. There's so many times where we project out what we think our life will look like and feel like, and we do it every year in my goals workshop. And yet every year I continue to still be surprised by what actually happens and where I actually end up. And a lot of times those scenarios are never what we added to our vision board, but sometimes it's more full and meaningful than we even thought possible. And a lot of times that comes from being open enough to let life in. We do our part, we put our work in, and we surrender to the outcome. Because when we're too rigid, either we won't hit the goal or we miss out on something amazing because we think the best possible scenario is one thing, but there's something out there that might be even better or has the right lessons for us to learn or has the right experience that we need to experience to grow into the person that we need and want to become. But there I was, sewing up this stuffed animal for a child, working on saving the day for something quote unquote catastrophic that had happened, which was this unicorn stuffed animal being torn open. And it was slightly confusing, but also satisfying in a weird way, not in the sense that I get to be the hero or that it's about me, but actually that there's so much in life that's bigger than us, that it's not actually about us. At the end of the day, it's about the collective, it's about the connection. And it was so unexpected. Like it was so ordinary, but it also felt so much bigger than me in that moment. Because this small unicorn that got torn mattered to a child. And I got to take care of something that mattered in her world. And there's meaning in that, as small as it might seem, because for me, impact and making a difference always looked like the difference I got to make through my work, the message I got to share and spread and teach through my podcast, through my business, through goals group and my teaching with others, or ideas that I'm sharing out in the world. That's the only place I ever imagined any meaning coming through the things that I'm doing would be coming from. There's just something really magical about these like small things in life, these little moments, these quiet moments that sometimes feel like they hold more meaning than trying to impact an entire auditorium full of people listening to you speak about something. And that moment specifically that I'm reflecting on just made me think about how often we go out and set our goals, and then life places us in entirely different moments, roles, opportunities, or even entire other chapters or seasons we couldn't have even anticipated, right? Sometimes we set a goal and there's this whole other season that gets presented to us that we have to sit through and move through and process through before we can even get to starting on that goal because life says, hey, this is what you need to work on first to get to the place that you're setting out to reach. This is that stepping stone. This is that next step on the staircase to get to where you want to go. And we've all been there. We've all gone through that where your life just looks so different from what you once imagined, or you're somewhere or doing things that you said you'd never do, not because you've been forced into something bad, but because the cards have been played a certain way and your mind has been expanded, or you've been exposed to new things. It's like the child that won't eat vegetables and then eventually eats vegetables because they learn how amazing they can be. So that's what I want to talk to you about this week is what happens when the goals that we set end up creating an entirely different life than we could have ever pictured, that we could have ever imagined. Not because anything fell apart, not because it's not working or you're not doing your part or there's anything wrong with you in any way, but because life just unfolds far beyond the limits and that tunnel vision of what we were able to imagine in a single moment of setting a goal. So think about the last time you actually set a goal, right? You're not just setting one goal, you're imagining entire life that goes with it. You're seeing this entire picture of what it'll look like. If you're setting a career goal, you're imagining like the position, the money, the people you'll be working with, how you wake up, how you go to bed, what the success will feel like, the things you'll get to have or do, the person you'll be, how you'll be showing up, and what happens after we reach it. So all of that comes to life and becomes a real living, breathing entity in your brain. And once you set that goal and make that real and speak it into existence, our brain starts building all the stories and scenery around it. There's kind of two different things happening simultaneously when that brain starts to build the pictures and stories around the goal that you're setting. There's the more rigid expectation, right? I'll be here for 20 years. I'll support myself this way. This is the identity that I will have, right? These are the next 5 steps. This is where my life's going. The other side of that is who you're going to become. And sometimes it's not exactly the journey we thought it would take to become that person. And it's different experiences that will actually bring about the actual thing deep underneath the layers of what that goal is actually saying that we're creating. And if we get stuck on the one side of it that says, oh, it has to look exactly like this, we miss out on the greater picture of what we're actually achieving, which is who we are becoming, who we are living into, the entire journey along the way to get there, because that matters far more than any milestone or ending journey that you're reaching here and far between each goal you set in each chapter of your life. And all of that together are just interpretations and perceptions of what our lives could look like, what we'd like them to look like. And the one side of it, which is very specific and rigid, is very limited to what we know at the time. Because as you live into that person on the right side of it, on the other side of it, right, the person you're becoming, as you live into that, your mind expands, your experience expands, your vision of what's possible gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the more you know, the more clearer you then get on what it is that you want and each new choice that you then make. So it's a constant unfolding. It can never be as rigid as the side of it that paints a picture of it has to look exactly like this. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong with that picture or those guidelines or the goals. And it does definitely not mean don't set the goal, because setting up the goal is setting up those guardrails, the guidance, it's the navigation on your airplane so that you know where you're going, so that you have an idea and a vision of where you're going, and then let the journey unfold from there. So you still need that starting point. You still need the direction, the map, the plan, and then the surrendering follows to what that will actually look like. That's allows us to be flexible and recognize that our life will keep moving each step of the way and unfolding and changing while we pursue it, while we gather new information, meet new people, discover new desires that we have, or expire old desires. Maybe you discover new capability or a new capacity you didn't even know that you had. Or maybe there's one you were stretching yourself for that you really decide, I don't actually have the capability or capacity for that. And you let that other thing go. New opportunities appear you couldn't have even planned ahead for. Other things end altogether without our deciding it. It just happens. The external world will continue to happen and change around us. And it's at the same time that we are growing and expanding into it. That version of us who eventually arrives at the goal or maybe expires a goal is never identical, like ever. It's never the same as the version we thought we'd be when we originally made the plan because of all of those moving and changing and evolving pieces of it. Many years ago, when I worked in health insurance, my goal was to stay there at least 5 years, continue growing within the company and the industry. And I had kind of this, career path in my mind of where I was going to go and the trajectory that I would be on. Like I thought I had found my set career path. I thought that's where I'd be staying. I knew the structure, I knew what growth could look like. There were very clear next steps available to me, and it wasn't temporary to me. This was going to be a long-term thing in my mind in my 20s. I saw my entire future in this one organization. And then overnight, our entire team was eliminated. In one day, that entire path and plan and structure that I thought was there was very quickly gone. And in the moment when something like that happens, you can't see the full journey ahead, even if it's going to be amazing. That complete and utter uncertainty feels super scary because it can feel detrimental when you have the world at your fingertips and you have an unlimited amount of options. The brain, due to survival, can tend to lean toward the negative side of things. But in reality, there's just as many good outcomes that can happen as bad outcomes. And I was not sitting there thinking, oh, what a wonderful activity. I bet this will introduce me to all these different types of careers, and I'll learn about entrepreneurship and working with, these really successful, seasoned entrepreneurs, and I'll learn all about business. That is what followed, but I could have never foreseen that happening. We usually understand those big transitions much more clearly, like way after the fact, in hindsight, right? Like after it's gotten better, after we've learned, after things have fallen back into place into a new way. That's when it makes sense. It's a lot harder in the moment to see forward and actually know what could possibly be happening in our benefit. But it allowed me to start my own business. I became a yoga teacher and then started yoga school and got certified as a teacher. And on top of that, started my own online business and started working with entrepreneurs all over the country. None of that was part of my plan to grow this long-term career in health insurance. And now looking back, I don't even think I would have ever been happy with that plan, but it was still scary in the moment. And it all ended up completely different than I ever imagined. It's sometimes when we kind of like lose that whole picture, we have that whole world ahead of us with unlimited options and nothing stable yet, that it can be an opportunity if we choose for it to be, if we cultivate it, right? And turn it into something useful, that it can reveal what really matters. It can reveal to us what we really want to do next when we keep moving, when we work on staying more positive, which I know it's hard, it's challenging. I struggle with it too, still to this day. Every time I go through a transition, my fear brain still kicks in with all the questions. What if, what if, what if, right? What could go wrong? But we also have to intentionally turn that around and ask ourselves, but what could also go right? And being exposed to the entrepreneurial world, both in my own entrepreneurial journey and working with other entrepreneurs, it changed what I knew as what could be possible. I saw people create opportunities out of almost nothing. Like I saw people build entire businesses around their skills, ideas, and experiences and what they've learned, and then turning around and helping other people turn their life and business around. I learned how you can have way more freedom, variety, creativity, and ownership of what your life looks like than just sitting in the 9 to 5. And there's nothing wrong with a corporate career, but for my brain specifically, I love the variety. I love the creativity. I love going from place to place to place and not being stuck in just one place. If you've listened to the episode where I interview my mom way back at the beginning of the podcast a couple years ago, we talk about how I saw her live that life. She was a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, traveling from school to school to an office to coffee shops to working from home. And she had such variety in her schedule and wasn't tied down to one desk all day long. And I knew instinctively that that would work better for me too. So this big change gave me that opportunity. And this whole entrepreneurial world showed me that I wanted more growth as a person, not just doing one job day in and day out, but continuing to learn and contribute in new and exciting ways, different ways to use my brain, solve complex problems that maybe other people were afraid of. I know even in that same health insurance career, there's times where a big organizational shift would happen and everybody would just freak out and panic. And I'd be the first one at the front line asking my boss, what can we do? How can I help? Like, this is exciting because it really can help us use our brain in a whole new way that it might feel challenging, but it really is more fulfilling and stimulating that helps us have a richer life. And when you look back to setting the goal for the health insurance career, there's no way I could have even identified at all, like in any clear way, that these were the things that I wanted. I had to go through the experience to end up on the other side and then have that language, that vocabulary to describe what it is that actually fulfilled me. Because when we set those goals, it's coming from a place of what we currently understand, not what we're going to understand as we become that person that we're living into through that goal. That whole journey is what teaches us what we're actually yearning for and what actually is going to feel good on a day-to-day basis. And I mentioned sometimes you either fulfill a goal or a goal might just expire because certain goals might serve their purpose or last for a season or a chapter and then not be needed anymore. So after being in the entrepreneurial world for a while, I decided to take a trip back to the corporate world and enter into an HR professional job because I was ready. I had learned so much working with the business owners that I was working with for all those years and building out their business with them and building everything up from scratch and making it a smooth running machine that I was ready to learn bigger business, not just run back to corporate. That was never the plan, but I wanted to see how to manage and communicate with bigger teams, with, bigger groups of people, and just have that experience and see what that even entailed. That part was intentional. I wanted to know what that felt like and how that looked. And I was able to do that. I worked across numerous initiatives, states, cultures, personalities, learning styles, leadership styles, communication styles, reporting to multiple different leaders throughout the organization. And I was able to expand so much. I had to understand how different people received information, how to get information all the way down to every level within the company, within teams, not just to leadership and let it get caught off there, but like how does every single person on every level of our teams reach the why behind an initiative, get excited, want to make the change, want to help us, implement things successfully and influencing people and teams who didn't report to me. I just had an influence on them. I didn't have direct supervision of them. And I got to practice all of that. I got to learn how to keep projects moving when people were super busy, resistant, disengaged, overwhelmed, distracted, or just really not even communicating with me or with each other. I got to navigate all those competing priorities on a much bigger scale than I had learned on small business teams. And again, I set up this goal for myself around 5 years. That's got to be the trick number that sets this off for change. But it ended up changing in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I thought that that would be a next longer term chapter. And for some reason, we end up thinking or believing that being successful or achieving something means selecting some goal, like the couple examples I've given, and then continuing with it forever. Like it just keeps on going and it never changes. That maybe if we change direction or question the path we're on, maybe we've wasted our time, wasted our efforts. Maybe we even wonder if we've failed, if that chapter ends up ending earlier than we anticipated. Or one of my fears have been too, what if we no longer want what we once wanted, am I just inconsistent, right? Am I just non-committal? Can I just not pick one path and stick to it? But that is not the point. The point is that we are, like I said already, continuing to evolve and grow because different goals can serve their full purpose, right? We are still getting something out of it even when it's not permanent or forever. My health insurance career was never supposed to carry me through my entire professional adult life. It carried me far enough to reach the entrepreneurial world. And then that entrepreneurship was never supposed to become the only way that I ever worked. It showed me what I valued. It showed me what I was good at. It showed me what I wasn't good at too, because I wore a lot of hats and there were some hats I was not good at wearing. And that's okay too. We get to learn all of that. And HR, working in that role, it wasn't supposed to become my full and final professional identity. That is not who I am. It allowed me to learn bigger business, much more complex communication, organizational leadership, reaching people on every level, dealing with multi-level, multi-emotion, multi-personality, right, across state lines issues, and how to bring that together and how to be a leader in all that through influence and through positive leadership. Any of those chapters ending does not erase what it gave us. It does not erase who we become and who we became in the process. And a goal changing does not cancel out any growth, and it does not mean anything bad about us. It actually means we're open enough and flexible enough to grow beyond it, to grow bigger than that goal into the next one. Because the goal is not always just that final destination, like those milestones I mentioned. Sometimes it's just the vehicle to get you to that next location and that next location. Even if you don't see yet where exactly you're going and where you're going to end up and who you'll fully become in that process. In my health insurance career, I could have never seen myself as a yoga teacher, an entrepreneur, working virtually with all these business owners, or even working as an HR professional. And when I was working with entrepreneurs and in that world, I could never have fully seen how that experience would change my entire understanding and desires around freedom and impact and having actually meaningful work. Starting the HR career, I could have never accounted for each skill and relationship and challenge and opportunity and realization and lessons that I would experience and go through and get to learn that would then carry me to a next chapter beyond that. And now preparing for the next journey involving real estate while doubling down on the podcast and goals group and everything else I'm doing in my business all never would have been clear in a previous chapter. There's just no way we can look ahead and see what's going to happen. It always ends up so much different than what we expect and that picture we talked about that our brain creates when we first set a goal. If you could actually for a moment look ahead at your life over the next 5, 10, 15, even 20 years and actually see what in reality would happen, not goal setting, not vision planning, but what would actually in reality happen, it could feel totally unrelated, like it makes no sense or it's chaotic. But always when we look backwards, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it all makes sense and we see where the dots connect and the stars align and we see a very clear pattern of how it's all connected and the journey it took us on and the things we got to learn, the people we got to meet, and the things we got to do through all of it. All of those skills that we get to acquire that come with us, even if titles or environments like change or shift or taken from us. Whatever you accumulated in those earlier goals is never a waste, even if you look back and think that was a complete failure. Like, I don't think any experience is a failure, truly. But even if you feel that way, there's still, I guarantee you, something that you got out of it, something that you got to learn and change from, and someone new you got to become. Because we have built this person right here, right now, today. I'm sitting here talking to you into a microphone, and you're sitting there listening to me in your headphones or on your speakerphone. And we don't know exactly where this next chapter will lead, where it will take us. And that is the point. Because every goal we create is made up by a version of us who has not yet lived the journey. We might know what we want. We might know how we want it. We might know where we want it. And we might make the best plan we could possibly ever create from where we're standing, from that limited vision that we can see at the moment. But we can never account for all the future versions of us who will still exist along the way. There's no way to yet know all the things we're going to learn. There's no way to know what will become important to us, which experiences that we go through that will stretch us, soften us, frustrate us, right? A lot of times in life, when things don't look how we expect it to, we feel frustration, and that's okay. Or we wake up with a desire that we didn't even know we had because of something new we learned or experienced. There's no way to know what life will introduce to us in the future. And that's why that rigid picture and that rigid plan that our brain designs around every goal doesn't have to be followed to a T. It's not an excuse to be lax on yourself and give up or not try, but it is an excuse and it is a reason to be flexible and to surrender and to open up and open your heart and understand that it will shift, it will change, it will be different. And to continually ask yourself, does this goal still fit? Is the deeper desire still there or has it changed? Has this goal completed what it's come here in my life and in my mind and in my heart to do? Or is it done? Or does it still have work to do? Am I still working on this or toward this because I want to? Or because an earlier version of me saw that as the best path? Which one is it? And what am I learning here? What is each chapter introducing me to? And what part of the experience do I want to actually take with me? And what part do I want to leave behind? Because every goal we set gives us direction, but they're not contracts. We don't have to ignore anything outside of it and follow to a T everything inside of it that we set, not yet knowing what was coming. Every day, every moment, every chapter downloads new information, exposes us to new data to let us make new and better decisions each day of that process. And one of the biggest traps we fall into is immediately labeling every unexpected turn. Oh, that was bad. Oh, that didn't go how I planned. Oh, that went exactly how I planned. So that's good and that's bad. And that's not necessarily true. We ask, oh, was this supposed to happen? Did I make the right choice? Did I ruin something, right? Is something else secretly better? Sometimes we don't even know yet. And sitting there ruminating and spinning on those types of questions, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it good? Is it bad? Isn't helpful. What's more helpful is being present with the process and simply moving through it and making a new choice, making a new decision every time you're given new information. And it can be complicated and it can have parts that we just absolutely love, parts we're still learning how to hold and be in the space of, parts we don't necessarily love that are difficult to sit in. And it can still be meaningful without being exactly what you originally wanted, exactly what you originally set out for. And it can be challenging without being a mistake. Everything that goes wrong, quote unquote, wrong, or different than you expect, or different than you hope, doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean the goal's wrong. It doesn't mean the scenario's wrong. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that it was challenging and you're learning and you can move through it. It can be completely different than you set out for without us allowing our mind to tell the story that it's some tragedy or a miracle, right? It doesn't have to be either. It can simply be a neutral part of the process. We can say, this is where my choices, my circumstances, my environment, the relationships I have, the experiences that I've been through from the beginning of my life to today, everything I've seen, heard, said, done, etc., has brought me to this very moment. And I could have never imagined it. I could have never pictured it in my mind. And I'm allowed to be present for it. I choose to be here. And there's freedom in that. There's freedom in allowing each and every experience to be unfamiliar, to be uncertain, to be neutral before demanding some verdict from it. Oh, it's bad. Oh, it's wrong, right? Because a lot of times when we close our mind in that way, we miss out on so much that's actually there for us to experience and see and learn from. The other part of it that I used to get way wrong is that enjoying the journey does not mean giving up your success. It doesn't mean just like, laying back, giving up, and not doing it. Like I talk about doing our part and then surrendering to the outcome, right? That doesn't mean do nothing because I said we do our part, right? And that doesn't mean accept less than. It doesn't mean settling. It simply means we do our part and we don't grip and try to wrap our fingers and white knuckle around the outcome and what is truly out of our control. Absolutely do and focus on what is in your control, but what's out of your control is not worth expending all of your brain space, all of your energy to the point where you then have no energy left for what actually matters. A lot of times, more movement and more change and more things popping up and coming up can happen than we could ever plan for or predict. but we can participate in what is unfolding and evolving in front of us while still making conscious and intentional decisions about what's going to happen next, about what we are going to do next. And we can appreciate where we are and continue building something new. It's not a passive thing. It's actually very active. And for me specifically, it takes intentional energy and awareness to remember, oh, yeah, okay, I'm here, I'm alive, the sun is shining, the sky is blue, the wind is blowing, right? I can hear the birds chirping, I can feel the counter under my hands, I can feel the ground under my feet, right? That presence, that being mindful in the moment and enjoying what that feels like to be alive, to be a human being, living and breathing and moving through this experience, through all of the emotions, through all the changes, through things working out in our favor and how we planned, and through things not working out how we planned, and just moving through it as it is. Because there's no one chapter that stays forever. So we can't, the same way we can't worry about being stuck in a challenging chapter for too long, we also can't hold on to a positive chapter for forever either, because the one thing we can guarantee will always happen is time will continue to move with or without us, ready or not. And we can be grateful for what each experience teaches us and still decide, okay, I'm ready to let this one go. Okay, I'm ready to move forward. Okay, I'm ready to move on. And acknowledge when something's not what you wanted or not what you pictured without spending time or actually wasting time and energy and efforts, resenting it for failing to match some old picture that your brain created when you set some goal a while ago. The questions that matter now are, can I experience the life that my goals are creating while it's unfolding? Can I stop measuring every present moment against the future that I once imagined or hoped for? Can I become curious about what's here right now, right in front of me? Can I notice how I'm expanding and growing, what I'm learning here? Can I enjoy parts of a life I never even knew to ask for, that I never even knew was for me? Can I allow an ordinary moment, sitting in a dark room during a thunderstorm, sewing up a unicorn, to matter without needing to know what it means for the rest of my life? Because this is my journey. This is my path right now, right here. And this is your journey. And this is your path. And it will continue to place us in situations that we never anticipated based on goals previous versions of us have set. We don't want to remain so attached to some idea, that original picture our brain made, that we resist actual real life happening right in front of our eyes, right before us. We can choose to stay present here and now and allow ourselves to make the experience ours, to choose for us, to make each new decision with each new version of us that we become as the path unfolds and reveals itself to us. That choice is always ours. So I want you to think about a goal that you've pursued or a chapter of your life that you maybe expected to look a completely different way that it ended up. Maybe you thought you'd stay in a career, like I thought more than once. Maybe you pictured living somewhere entirely different than where you ended up. Maybe you thought success would feel way different than it actually feels now. Maybe you thought a relationship you were in, a business you started, something going on with your family or your friends, or a version of yourself would unfold a totally different way than it actually did. So think of that example and then ask yourself, okay, what was the original goal? What picture did my brain attach to it, right? Like what did that, you know, feel like? What did it look like? How did that look in every area of my life? And as I ask these questions, if you want to and have the time, you can pause the audio and really think about this and maybe even journal about it. What parts of this picture were the actual goal and what were just assumptions that my brain just automatically attached without a lot of extra thought around it? Where did pursuing that goal take me? What did I learn or develop along the way? And what else became possible only because I actually took action and moved toward that goal? Was there a deeper desire underneath that original goal that I later got to uncover? Is that goal still alive in me now, or has it changed? Maybe it went away, or maybe it just evolved into something different. Maybe it just changed form a little bit. Am I resisting anything in my current life because it's harmful or wrong for me, or because it just looks different than I anticipated? What's available to me to experience or appreciate here? What could actually be good here? And finally, what do I want to carry into whatever comes next? What do I want to make sure that above all else, I bring this with me into the next season or chapter or goal? And not every, unexpected turn or thing that doesn't go our way or isn't in our favor necessarily, not at each and every single one of those will become, this beautiful blessing tied up in a perfect little bow. We don't have to pretend that we would actually choose every little thing that happens in our life from some, menu and a drive-through of life experiences. But we can honestly reflect and recognize where we are and have enough presence to decide how we want to meet it now and how we want to show up now. Because life won't always look the way we thought it would when we first set a goal. I mean, almost never, right? The career can change, the priorities can change, our desires change, our version of what success even means can change. And sometimes we arrive somewhere we never even planned to be. And we're still deciding how we feel and still processing all of that information because it feels like a lot. But it does not automatically mean we chose anything wrong or did anything wrong. It just means the goal has changed, the environment's changed, our seasons change. We're being introduced to new skills, new people, new possibilities, maybe new versions of ourselves that we couldn't have seen from the beginning. And it's taking us far enough to reveal the next road, the next chapter, the next season. Each goal gives us that direction, reveals that next path. And we can keep choosing, keep making those decisions one at a time. We can keep creating new things, adjusting as we go, moving forward, taking that action while still looking around and enjoying the experience and being present with what life has brought us. So even if your life looks different from the picture that you once created in your brain, it is still your life and your journey, and you get to decide exactly how you want to meet it today.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.